You know what? We've got 36 people. Thank you for finding that button. That's excellent. That's a great crowd, I can tell already. All right, so you know what? I'm just going to get this thing going so that we have enough time for conversation and Q&A at the end. I'd like to thank you all for joining our session today, Unlocking the Power of Microsoft Fabric with CDW. There's a lot of change going around. I'm really curious, of the 37 or so of you that are here now, if you could use a reaction, right? If you have been talking about Fabric, moving into Fabric, deploying Fabric, have questions about Fabric, or negotiating your licensing for Fabric. Let's see how many of you have this on top of mind. All right, well, at least I got my coworkers at CDW, right? But that's really interesting because we do have a whole bunch going on with Fabric, and it has been very top of mind. But before we get into that topic of conversation, Julie, can you hit next slide, please? I'm Christopher Markolis. I'm head of strategy for data here at CDW. I come from a long, long history of working all over the place. A tiny company called IBM. Before that, I used to work for a living as a customer in a myriad of different industries. I know what it's like to have no budget, no resources, no appreciation, and a lot to get done. And I'm very lucky today to have with me one of my great friends, Julie Nelson. She is going to introduce herself a little later in the presentation, but one thing I can tell you about Julie is that she is one of the smartest people that I know in this industry, and she's going to share a lot of insights with us as we go forward. If you guys are curious, QR codes, it's where you take your phone and do the little scanning thing that COVID taught us. This is how you get to Julie and myself directly through LinkedIn. Both of us do share really interesting novel content out on the universe that Al Gore built with the intranet. But with that, let me get right into the conversation. May I have next slide, please, Julie? So we're going to cover a lot today. We're going to talk about what we do here in data and analytics at CDW. We're going to explore this topic of data readiness for Fabric, which I hope is kind of on the front of everyone's mind, right? AI happened, ChatGPT happened, all the generative AIs happened, and now we have to get the data to the place where it needs to be, Q Fabric. We'll talk very briefly about some industry trends, and then Julie's going to take us into an overview of what Fabric is, how it works, the licensing changes that have occurred, and we'll talk to some success stories before we get into a Q&A session. At any point through the conversation today, you guys should be able to find the Q&A tab up at the top. That's where you can suggest any questions for us to talk through as we get towards the end of the presentation. Next slide, please. So in case you were wondering, over the last 5 or so years, CDW has been on a shopping spree. They've been bringing together a lot of organizations through M&A activity, ours included, to build it into a technological monolith that can solve almost every problem. When I talk about our data and analytics organization that Julie and I are both part of, we're just a tiny slice of that pie, a measly $500 million worth of product and professional services. But what's really interesting to call attention to is that we are all industry experts within data. We all came from somewhere else working in this field, working in this industry. We have over 100 really highly skilled onshore resources that focus, live and breathe and die by professional services in the data space, and over 25 offshore resources. Those offshore resources notably are badged employees. They are our coworkers, not subcontractors. So we do have the ability to work with you on projects both during North American business hours and during our sleepy time when our friends over in India are experiencing their daylight hours. So with that, let's go to the next slide, please. When I think about, my loving home here at CDW and how we fit amongst all of the rest of the organization, what's really notable and different about how life at CDW is versus elsewhere, how we support our customers, is the fact that we're all surrounded by brilliant minds in all of these different domains. And so as we're working on solving a very difficult customer challenge, for example, it's really easy for me to whip out the Teams Messenger and call on a friend, a coworker over in cybersecurity or platform engineering or networking or in the hardware team so that we can bring the right answers to bear very, very quickly. And this is something that does stick out distinctly for CDW versus others out in the marketplace. Next slide, please. So this is why we're here, right? The crux of this conversation is I have data and I have to solve problems. Whoever the I is, the we is, we're at work, we have to solve problems, things are difficult. And, a lot of times vendors are going to be very narrowly focused on just do it my way, just buy into this. All the cars go the same direction on the highway. When the reality is, data is messy, data is complicated. Data is a big pile of spaghetti. And once you become aware of that and you live in that space and you acknowledge it, it makes it a lot easier to unthread this quilt and stitch together in the way that we need it to work. Because at the end of the day, we all need to solve problems and be data driven. Next slide, please. So I love quotes, right? Gardner apparently thinks that by the end of 2024, 75% of organizations will have established a data center of excellence to support all of their initiatives. So, I'd be curious, since we all found that React button, how many of us have a data center of excellence in our organization that we know of? That's what I thought. Thank you for the few of you. I'm so glad to hear that you guys are there with us. The reality is, I see quotes like this, and I think to myself, wow, we've got a lot of work to do. So with that, let's go to the next slide. So what is a data center of excellence? Well, it's something that treats data as a core asset. It's a way for us to organize the organization through a matrix, to centralize expertise, to put some standardized best practices in place, to talk about how we're going to enculture our organization so that everyone willingly whips out that laptop, that tablet, that cell phone, and is data driven. They consume data and insights to take action to drive outcomes for our shareholders, our customers, our coworkers, and everything in between. It's a place where we can, actually have the conversation around maybe being compliant with, I don't know, GDPR, CCPA, all of the myriad of regulations that are out and are coming out to govern and manage and regulate data governance, data management, artificial intelligence. It's going to be a never-ending thing. This is where we can come together as a team and cheerlead each other into success and complain about the places that we found challenges and share those outcomes with others so that they don't have to suffer the way we did. The ultimate goal of a data center of excellence, apart from respecting data and putting policies in place and driving decisions and doing innovation, is to maximize the value of your data, not only for your organization, but for your customers, your business partners, everybody involved. So with that, next slide, please. So, solving problems with data is really, really messy. If you've been doing this for a while, you know what I'm talking about. It's not like I just go and buy one software product and solve the problem. This is an example of a MAD chart by a gentleman who spends his entire living identifying vendor-driven solutions that solve for each of the niche little tiny domains of expertise we need to build a complete data solution. And so when we're talking about solving a particular problem, like deploying a chatbot or predicting an outcome or prescribing a reaction on a website, depending on how the person navigates, we have to go out and reach around and find all of these different pieces and parts and cobble them together into a complete solution and hope they work from many different places, many different vendors. When in reality, who has that time? And then it gets more complicated. Well, go ahead, Julie. The next slide.
Oh, okay.
But it gets even more complicated because everything we touch and do in data, we have to really think thoroughly through. We have to think about the impact to our data estate, our data platforms, where we put our infrastructure. We have to make certain that we're following all the rules that we've put in place for data governance, because I hope we have that, right? I have to make sure that we're producing analytics and distributing insights and making it actionable and useful for everyone else. And I hope that I have a strategy around all of that when I'm doing it. So everything that we touch in data always requires a lot of work. Next slide, please. So, and go ahead and build that up for me, please. According to the Harvard Business Review, a data-driven transformation yields benefits. So a data-driven transformation is one where an organization recognizes that there's value in their data. And if they do something meaningful with their data, to the extent that the end users in the organization are consuming data to make decisions to drive outcomes, when we do those kinds of transformations that are anchored to the black hole of data, all the gravity the data has, we see that, at least Harvard Business Review sees, organizations increase their revenue performance, they get to market before their competitors, their customers are happier, and they're making more money. That's like the goal of all of us, I would think, right? Next slide, please. And if we achieve those outcomes, that's great. But it's interesting, these little statistics from Accenture and Gardner. 91% of leaders have reported this year that their organizations have invested in data and analytics. I'm not surprised by that number. I can stand behind that. That makes me think back to November 2022 when GPT first came out, right? After significant investment from Microsoft and OpenAI, they produced some interesting novel outcomes. But now, what's really interesting is that of the majority of organizations who are investing in data and analytics differently than before, only a third of them are producing valuable outcomes, are realizing the tangible value they need to justify the investment and the continued progress forward. So a third of people are succeeding at the end of the day. Next slide, please. And what we're hearing from those customers is that they're struggling, that they're trying to react to the growth of AI in the marketplace. And every leader in your organization, I'm assuming this is the case, right? You guys tell me through your reactions. Somewhere in your organization, someone's saying, let's use AI to do this. Let's use the chatbot to solve that problem. Let's see if generative AI can change our circumstances this way. So AI is growing everywhere. It's not just happening in the large Fortune 10 companies. It's happening in small business and privately held enterprise, all the way on up to all the fortunes in the world. This movement into embracing data and AI has caused us to have to spend more time trying to solve problems like finding all the disparate data sources in the organization, bring them together. Customers are asking how they manage security, how they manage their risk differently than before, because they're sharing data more than they ever had. And they're being aware of the fact that the GPTs can do that too. They're concerned about the analytical agility. How do I respond to driving analytics in my organization with the proliferation of more data and more insights that are being asked for? And more importantly, how do I translate these insights into meaningful and digestible nuggets so that end users of every skill level and technical acumen can digest, absorb, and react with those things to produce the outcomes we're looking for? Next slide, please. So the challenge is really distilled out there in the marketplace today around all of the AI, all of the generative things really are about, trying to figure out how do I scale data analytics while reducing my costs, or at least keeping them the same? How do I break down data silos, eliminate this concept of sprawl and bring it all together in one place so that I can make meaningful action out of it? How do I drive analytics adoption? Because more eyes on data means more people consuming data, which means more people talking about the data, about the quality of the data, the outcomes they're looking for with the data. And how do I make that data accessible in a well-governed and secure way? I don't know. Next slide, please. So, like what we're really trying to say is customers, the market, our partners, CDW itself, we're all looking to lay foundations for data and analytics so that we can achieve advanced analytics and AI outcomes. Next slide, please. And this, my friends, is our secret recipe card. This is from Grandma's little recipe card box. We whipped it out for you today. These 6 things, these 6 pillars of interest are our answer to solving for data excellence. So to solve for data excellence, to achieve outcomes, to become more data driven, we need to make sure that our customers have a goal in mind. They have a strategy in place, and it has to constantly evolve. We have to make sure you have agile infrastructure, something that can scale with the demand of the day, of the hour, of the minute, of the second, and be elastic enough that it doesn't just keep on spinning and cost us a fortune, right? Cost overages never do anybody any favors. We have to make sure that you have data and AI governance in place. So I'm calling it data governance, right? Policy, procedure, rules, how we manage data, how we manage the workflows of things. We have to make sure that the data that we're using has really high quality, that it's telling the truth the way that it sees it. We need to make sure that the organization can do self-service. And that means your C-suite all the way down to those kids coming fresh out of college. Everyone should be able to use data in a way that's accessible to them. And if we do that, then we've driven culture, data culture, and literacy throughout the organization to drive to new outcomes. Tackle these 6 things, and you're in a better place than you were yesterday. Next slide, please. So with that, I'm going to pass the torch over to my dear friend, Julie, and she's going to talk to us about Fabric.
Thank you, Christopher. Hello and good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Julie Nelson. I'm on Christopher's team here and working closely with our Microsoft team here at CDW to bring Fabric out as a reality with our customers and kind of help them along that Fabric journey. So just a little bit about my background, very similar to Christopher's, but I started on the customer side. So I was sitting in your chair looking for different solutions and everything. And then over time, I went to the evil vendor side. The same little company called IBM. And then now I'm on this side, and I love this side because I get to look at all of the technologies out there. If you recall that slide that Christopher showed that had literally over 1,000 different vendors and everything out there, and how to narrow that down. And that's going to bring us into the conversation that we're having today, and that's around Fabric. So one of the hottest conversations in the market today is around Fabric. So Christopher, showed you kind of that high level of data and analytics and the customer problems and what the analysts and Gartner are saying is the direction of business moving into the future. And when you take all of those things together, it's very overwhelming. I remember sitting back in the customer seat and I remember how overwhelming it was to figure out how do I answer all of my business needs? How do I answer the questions that I have? What tools do I need to do that? And our friends at Microsoft have brought together Fabric. They have taken over 30 years of evolution of their products and they took a step back and they said, you know what, how do we make this easier? As broad as the landscape is out there, how do we make things easier for our customer? And that is taking their solution and their suite of applications that have been out there that we've individually brought on over the years and built up and everything and said, you know what if we change the paradigm of go to market and we package these things together and we bring it out and we make things easier for our customer. Easier because they're all integrated to work end to end better than they ever have before. But more importantly, at least in the chair that I was sitting in on the customer side, making licensing and all of that easier. What if we didn't have to manage all these individual licenses for all of the individual applications that we have out there, but instead we bring it to our customers and we say, okay, if you buy Fabric, then you get the benefit of all of this, this technical goodness that Microsoft has to offer, and you can kind of pick and choose and put it together as you need and customize it, and then infinitely grow along with it. And then as we bring in new technologies like Copilot that we'll touch on today, how is that more seamless for our customers? So we want to really dive into kind of maybe where you are with products and how that relates into Fabric. So moving forward with that, I want to talk about one thing that I want to hit on because I'm sure many people in the audience use that react button. I can't see it, but Christopher, let me know what the reaction is. How many of you have Power BI licensing in your organizations today? And you know that there is a licensing migration, notification that's coming. And for those of you who aren't sure or you don't think you have Power BI, I could guarantee you that if you have Excel users in your organization, then there is some sort of underground Power BI going on for analytics in the background. So anyway, I don't know if we got any reactions. I don't have that view right now since I'm sharing. But a lot of the customers, a lot of the conversations that we're getting right now are along the lines of not just moving to Fabric, but how do I take the existing where I am right now and get over there? And timing is of the essence right now. So that's why we wanted to have this webinar with you guys today, is to really talk about the fact that Power BI premium capacity SKUs, they're all being retired and they're being migrated over to Fabric. And now is the time for customers to begin that transition over to the new licensing. Now, if you have the user license, or premium, the capabilities are not changing. So the capabilities, you're not going to lose anything with Power BI by the migration. That's a licensing thing. But what you're going to gain is some of the new things that you can do that you can only do once you get over to Fabric. So let's look at that timeline real quick so you guys kind of understand what's going on. So Microsoft has already started this. So back on July 1st was the end of sales for the old licensing model that was out there. And any customers that have licenses that are expiring, their renewals are up from now till the end of the year, then this is the time to look at doing that migration. So you're going to take what you currently have, get it migrated over, and you're good to go. For those of you who might be on an enterprise agreement or other software agreements, you might have a little bit longer, depending on what the terms of those contracts are. But just to put it in perspective on the timeline, this is where we are right now. So we know that, from now through the end of the year, there's many, many customers out there that have this initiative that are going to be going on, and we want to help you ease over to that so you're ready to go in 2025. And for those of you who have renewals later on, we can absolutely work with you on what the roadmap is, for a seamless transition into the future. So let's take a look at that licensing. So again, we used to license everything individually. Power BI was one of them. So that's the example here. So we licensed them individually. These things are moving over to the Fabric licensing, again, depending on what the timing is. But there is a migration exercise that we can help you with, and we're going to get into that in just a moment, about how the differences between your current licensing and your new licensing and where you are now and what that means in the future. So we can do that sizing exercise. We can do that migration exercise with you to do the migration. Once you get over to Fabric, what you'll see here is, your Power BI, now you get the Copilot capabilities out there. So all the AI goodness that Christopher was talking about, now that comes to you when you get over to Fabric, and then for Power BI, you get the viewer licenses and you're able to share that out. So the licensing model goes from the licensing that you have now, and there's a two-pronged approach here. There's a compute factor and there's a storage factor. So let's just talk about what those mean real quick. So the compute factor, that is the capacity of all of your users and who all is using it and everything. So that's more of we'll call it the usage side, to simplify it, versus how much data do you have that's going to be moving over into that environment. And that is the storage side. So we have calculations. We can help you figure out what the before and after on this is going to look like. And I want to get into Fabric just a little bit here. Now, I know we have a very short time with you today, so I'm not going to go into the whole breadth of everything that is on Fabric. But what this illustration will show you is, from your familiarity with the products and the applications that you currently have running in your environments and the licensing, you can see, Data Factory, is now the data integration and the data engineering part of Fabric. And you've got, how Synapse is moving over, Power BI is moving over, you've got Azure Databricks. And the way you see this illustration is that's sitting on top of Copilot. So once you get over to Fabric, you're going to be able to roll out those Copilot initiatives that you have out there. And all of this sits on OneLake, right? But OneLake plays very well now with, of course, Azure. But if you have your data sitting in other places, on other cloud platforms, sorry, I think my cat just photobombed me here. Or if you have other third parties, I mean, that all rolls into OneLake, that single unified view. So everything is now available. It's moving through. You've got Copilot that you can run, and the familiarity of all the applications that you're used to with Microsoft out there. And again, so the Copilot experiences with the AI-driven insights, all of the stuff that Christopher was talking about and the considerations regarding, I want to move to AI, I have AI initiatives, I've got to start with data governance, I got to start with data quality. That's the Microsoft Purview part of Fabric. So they really have brought in all of the different considerations across the data and analytics landscape. They brought them together into a package here that we can help you roll out into the future. And I'll skip through some of these, but just how Copilot is going through all of the applications out there. And then there's a bunch of success stories. So I don't know the range of industry sectors that everyone on the call here might be in right now, but whether you're in healthcare, whether you're in financial services, if you're in retail, if you're in the public sector, sustainability, we have tons of different use cases out there and positive success stories that we have that we can share with you to show how other customers have benefited from their migration into Fabric. And Microsoft wants to help you get moved over to Fabric. So there are funding motions that we can walk you through. There's a lot of requirements that you're going to need help walking through in order to get Microsoft funding, but they want to do this as a benefit and as a promotion to help you get moving along your Fabric journey and get some of that financing out there. So this is where we're going to have a QR code. This is where CDW and our resources, we would love to speak to you. Where are you now? Where do you want to go? What is that licensing impact? We can do that with you, and then we can do an assessment and a roadmap. And at this point, I'm going to pass it back in our last few minutes here to Christopher, and he's going to go over how we actually do get you started and what we have out there to kind of jumpstart your Fabric journey. Christopher?
Great. Go ahead and hit next slide for me, please, Julie. Thank you. So, what I heard Julie say was, if I move into Fabric and I use all the capabilities that Microsoft is affording me with a single investment, that I can leverage Copilot to do like magic things. Like, I don't know, hey, Copilot, build me a dashboard that shows me these metrics color-coded by the quarter of the year, and magically it works, right? That you have to move into Fabric to get the value. And so to help you get there, as your trusted partner, we've come up with a whole bunch of different service offerings. And I think suffice it to say, we have a lot of capabilities. Some are a packaged offering, like maybe our Fabric readiness assessment, where we come in and we assess if you're ready to upskill those licenses and migrate into all of the Fabric capabilities. Or maybe you'd want a Fabric call a friend. You want a book of hours that you can just schedule every Friday. You get a Julie technical resource available to help you out. Maybe you want a bespoke engagement where you've tried moving in and you're having some challenges. We have a lot of different ways that we can help you get to where you need to go. Next slide, please. Because at the end of the day, once you've moved into Fabric, then you're going to start to question all of the other capabilities and all of the other outcomes you could probably start driving with your data. Maybe you want to evaluate moving fully into a modern data platform that's elastic. Maybe you're looking for an architect as a service, call a friend. Maybe you would like to really zone in to data quality and go through our data quality design workshop. This is where we bring everybody together and we assess, the root cause of quality in your organization and help you build a roadmap to solve that, so that all of the benefactors of the co-pilots and the dashboards and all of the other tools that we use in the business, they benefit. So we have a lot of different ways that we can help you get there. And to make that easier for you, since a few of you, I have some new friends on LinkedIn already. Thank you for that. You can go next slide, Julie. To help you get there, because we're recognizing that you have a starting point. Are you ready? Have you solved the problem? Have you negotiated your new licensing? Have you moved into that? Have you facilitated that transition? Have you realized the value of your data? Well, to help you get there, if you'd like the help, next slide, please. Feel free to scan this QR code. This is going to take you just to a simple form where, if you want to, you can request a conversation with one of our CDW Microsoft Fabric experts. You're going to be able to have any kind of conversation with them, as you'll note when you get to the form. So you might be requesting an overview that's in more detail, an in-depth review of Fabric. You might be looking to understand how Copilot, all of the different Copilots, might help you be more efficient and differently successful. You might be wanting to talk about your data state. So feel free to scan that and get going. Julie, do you have any other wrap-up comments or questions you'd like to ask the audience before we call it a day?
No, I would love to hear from you all. So please scan this QR code, at least reach out. Let's start that conversation, see where you are, and help get you pointed in the right direction, especially for those of you who, again, your licensing may be coming up due here in just the next few weeks or in the next year. I definitely want to talk to you guys and help you in any way I can to just ease the migration over and get you a roadmap for what Fabric is going to do in your organization.
All right, I don't see any questions in the Q&A. You've got 30 seconds to get one out there if you're looking for an answer. Otherwise, please feel free to ask those questions during your conversation with one of our experts.
All right, well, thank you all for your time and visiting us today, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.